What if Luffy had no devil fruit? Would he still be as powerful? Well, that's a little complicated, but I'll clear it up for you. Now first, if he didn't have a devil fruit, he'd be smarter and more tactical, because he'd have to think before he reacts to every little situation. And that's because gaining that rubber body at such a young age allowed him to take unnecessary risks. I can't tell you how many times I've seen him put himself in a position that would end his existence. Second, he'd still have crazy physical strength because his bloodline is full of monsters. From his revolutionary father Dragon, all the way to his legendary marine grandfather Garp, so it's safe to say that you wouldn't be able to outmuscle him. Also, he would master all forms of Haki, which again is something he's inherited. And as you know, this is the crowning jewel of the entire series, because it allows you to defend yourself against devil fruit users. And when you look at his friend Shanks and the King of Pirates Goldie Rogers, you'll realize that neither one of them had a devil fruit, and they still managed to become. Luffy always gets revenge against someone who wrongs him or his friends, except for one particular person. But first, you have to remember that most of his fights revolve around liberating somebody. For example, Arlong was holding his navigator hostage emotionally, so he had to come through and put hands and feet on him. Also, the government got a taste of Rampage Luffy when they thought it was a good idea to take one of his favorite archaeologists. It's almost like nothing could stop him once he puts a target on you. Just ask Mr. Crocodile and countless others. So if he says he's coming for you, you're as good as gone. But the most infamous case is when he got on the phone with Big Mom. But unlike all the other people that got done in, Big Mom didn't lose to Luffy. Instead, she ended up getting jumped by a couple of his friends. So she is the one person that Luffy did not get revenge on. Luffy's transformation and development are god tier, and you probably completely missed how insanely strong he is. So let me quickly break it down for you. First was the speed boost he gained after unleashing second gear, which I feel is overlooked by a lot of fans. But this literally made him as fast as grown men who have been training in the Marines for years, and as fast as secret agents that work directly for the world government. Now second is his mind-boggling Haki transformation, which is something that developed slowly right in front of our eyes, as he learned how to apply it to his body and his mind, which basically makes him able to see into the future, and pretty much gives him the toughest exterior skin you could bump into in the series. And third is the best transformation in all of anime, and that is fifth gear, which is the greatest butt-kicking concept ever, because you're only limited by your imagination, and that is some god-tier stuff. Is it just me, or is Zoro a better matchup for Blackbeard? Now I know that might sound crazy, but follow me for a second here, because you might be surprised. First, can you say that Blackbeard is physically stronger than him? No, you can't, because you've seen him get out-muscled plenty of times. First by Ace, and at one point Luffy during Marineford, so the physical strength has to go to Zoro. Second, his main ability is nullifying devil fruit power, and that's usually what gives him an advantage, but in this case, Zoro has no devil fruit, just hands, feet, and swords. So Blackbeard would be getting chopped up. Now third, if Zoro can get close enough, he could liberate both of Blackbeard's arms from his body, which would leave him unable to use Quake, or Vortex, which to me would be a Zoro victory. But sadly, how Big Mom got her devil fruit powers has to be the craziest story, and also the most overlooked for a reason. Because as some of you may know, she was adopted by an elderly woman who ran a children's orphanage. And it just so happens that this woman was the one who originally ate the devil fruit. But one day, Big Mom, who was pretty much a giant as a kid, got hungry and blacked out. And when she came back to her senses, all the children and the woman at the orphanage was gone, and Big Mom had gained all of her new abilities. So what do you think went down? If Nami were to travel back in time, could she beat Arlong? Well, first, you have to remember that Arlong is a fishman, which means he still has super strength and an extremely tough body. And the last time I checked, our favorite girl doesn't have that. So she's at an extreme disadvantage. Also, standing in her way is the fact that Arlong is extremely fast, because this man is pretty much a shark on land. But this is where I give my girl the advantage, because using her move Mirage Tempo, she can make it look like there's multiple versions of herself everywhere, which is very distracting to villains. And when she pairs it up with Zeus, which allows her to deliver a destructive lightning bolt, our girl is going to inflict a lot of damage. But unfortunately, we saw that it took an entire building collapsing on Arlong to defeat him, so I think our favorite girl is out of luck. If Usopp never met Luffy, he would have been a menace on the same level as Captain Kidd and Law. But what would trigger this change and power boost would be Captain Kuro actually succeeding in taking out his girlfriend, which would lead him down the path of getting a real weapon instead of his traditional slingshot. But knowing that he can't achieve everything on his own, he would form a pirate group. And we know how good he is at spotting strong people. And with the anger of being abandoned by his father and losing his girl, Usopp would go down an evil path and make it his mission to hunt down Shanks and his old man. But before that, he would need a power boost, which would lead him directly to eating a devil fruit. So he would not only be one of the most accurate snipers, but he would also have a devil fruit and haki, making Usopp a legitimate contender for King of the Pirates. Zoro, at this point, can seriously hurt Luffy or beat him, and here are the 3 reasons. First, you have to admit that Zoro has been gaining strength at the same pace as Luffy, so he's definitely not going to outmuscle him, especially when you see how Zoro trains. Second, when it comes to mastering haki, both of them are on a god tier level, which shouldn't surprise you after the King fight, because this man Zoro was on an absolute tear. Also, everyone knows Luffy has a weakness to sword users, because it's the only real damage he can take, and that was very clear when he almost attacked Mihawk. Now third, which is the biggest upper hand that Zoro would have, actually comes from Usopp, because he proved that there is a blueprint to how Luffy fights, and if you have the skill sets, you may be able to pull it off. But tell me, do you think Zoro stands a chance? Usopp would absolutely destroy Captain Kuro, and I'll prove why it won't be close. Now I know this was a tough villain for Luffy to beat, but this is a man with a 16 million berry bounty versus Usopp, who is over 500 million. Now keep in mind that all of Kuro's attacks involve him quickly running around and slashing, especially his most powerful attack, which requires him to blindly attack at full speed. But Usopp can quickly nullify that attack by using his Shuriken technique, which would make it extremely painful for him to move around. And he could then follow it up with Midori Boshi Devil, which would quickly trap Kuro in a giant vine plant. And before this man could cut himself loose, our favorite captain would unleash his strongest move, Baku Bokuri, which creates an explosion so big that no human would be able to escape. And since we remember Captain Kuro being defeated by a simple headbutt, I can confidently say that Usopp would definitely defeat the villain from his arc. But what do you think? Zoro will pass away near the end of One Piece, but you should have noticed that already if you were paying attention. First, he has taken more damage than any character in the series, to the point that he absorbed all of Luffy's damage from previous battles when Kuma gave him the option. Second, the show's creator has shown that he has lingering injuries. Just think about how many times we've seen him in bandages for an extended period of time. I mean, this guy has broken bones all over the place, but still manages to put on a show for us. And the third clue is a pretty big one, because family, if you were paying attention to what he said during his battle with King, you'd realize that he was warned about pumping so much energy into his heart, but he simply smiled the same way Luffy did and said that he didn't care what the outcome was, as long as Luffy becomes King of the Pirates. So for all the fans of Zoro, maybe your guy won't make it,